This is a sort of a guide and not a rule as to what types of boards are for what kinds of waves. Any of these boards can be ridden in any of these wave conditions. It's just what's best suited for that particular wave. So in the smaller sort of spilling wave here, we've got our fishes. And boards like this board here, this is not technically a fish, but it's sort of a smaller wave, crumbly wave type board. Then we've got our short board thrusters right up through sort of semi-guns and things like that for these steeper hollow waves. They're just a little narrower, a little longer, sharper rails. They hold up a little better for that sort of critical type wave. Definitely a more advanced type of surfboard. And then we've got our fun shapes right up to longboards. Really good for summer up here and stuff with the spilling waves. You can pretty much ride those in anything with a longboard, but this is just a general guide as to how you sort of choose where you're going to go. Generally, beginners want to start in this range here because it's a stabler platform in order to learn on. These tiny boards you'll take. I know a lot of guys are stubborn. They're like, I'm going to ride this thing, and 2 years later they're still trying to ride it, you know. So, you know, as a guide, start longer, heavier, you know, solid platform, and then as you want to go down, you may want to stay a longboarder. That's perfectly fine, or you might want to try out some of the shorter boards, but ideally you should be able to ride all these in the end. So the anatomy of a board. The biggest question that I get by far is, what is a board made of? That's a giant question because boards are made of many different things, especially nowadays. They started off as wood, and then we started getting foam cores, various foam cores. But I'm going to show you just quickly what a standard board like this is made of. It's sort of the most cost-effective type of board to make. It's what people are comfortable with. But then you get into things like carbon fiber and sandwich construction and so on, where you have different layers inside the board. That's more expensive technology, a little higher end, but I'll just go over what, like the basics still apply. So this foam core, it can either be polyurethane foam like this blank here. This is sort of a cross section of a scrap piece I had laying around. There's a stringer in the center here, which is kind of the backbone of the board. It gives the foam a little bit more strength. It's also a guide when shaping as to always constantly having a center point. And then this is the foam area. So this is polyurethane foam, and then there's EPS foam, which is much like a styrofoam cup. This takes a different type of resin than this does. This will take any kind of resin and still hold up. Then you've got your layers of glass. Like on its own, if you were to shape this foam, it would suck up some water, it would snap, it would be, you know, terrible. So we have to encapsulate it with some sort of strength without getting too much weight. So generally, this is 2 layers of 4 ounce. The 4 ounce is sort of irrelevant at this point, but 2 layers of cloth on the top, 1 layer of cloth on the bottom, mixed with some sort of resin is sort of the standard. What types of cloth you use is what separates this type of board from a carbon fiber board. You'd use carbon cloth and so on. And basically it's laminated to give the board its protective shell and allow it to be ridden out in the waves and yet still be lightweight. Like they're quite fragile in terms of against hard objects, but they're pretty tough in the water. So the shaping is the very first process. A lot of these blanks are made for us now, which is really nice. They come in a fairly close to the finished product shape, but there's quite a bit of shaping that needs to be involved before you can actually finish off the board. So I usually start on a computer. I do a CAD program, come up with volumes and different rockers and stuff, and come up with an outline which I would print off and transfer to wood. So then we use things like hand planers, a saw to outline it, various sanding devices on, this is a foam blank here, and these are all foam blanks, to get the board to where you want it to be before you encapsulate it. That's probably the trickiest point. Foam is very delicate, so you have to be really finesse with your tools, but that's basically what you want to do. So these characteristics are based on whatever type that I showed you, a board that you want to finish off with. There's a finished shortboard ready for glassing. Now at this point, if we want to put color like this, or artwork, we've done people's tattoos on their boards. Sometimes it's just basic color you want to do. This is the point that it's best to do it at, so that it's encapsulated and protected as well by the outer shell of the board. Here's a paint job we actually did for Billabong, but basically there's a series of masking going on here, and then you spray the different colors, and then that's sort of the finished blank. Notice I have little pieces of paper towel so I don't even damage that, and then that goes to the glassing room and is ready for its layer of fiberglass. So the glassing part, here's my glassing stand here. You can see I'm proud Canadian. We always have our flag above our glassing area, but we basically cut the laps of glass ready for the resin. The resin's mixed up in a very specific ratio of catalyst to resin, which is very scientific as well. There's so many different types of resins, from epoxy to polyester. This is a polyester board here, but you have to make sure your calculations are exactly right for the board to be at its maximum strength. And then here I'm saturating the cloth and spreading it out and basically encapsulating the board in fiberglass. So for finishing, it's kind of a relief point at this point, because once we've got the foam encapsulated and it's all glassed and it's hard, we can start handling the board a little less like a piece of foam and a little more like a surfboard. So here I'm installing fin systems. There's so many different kinds of fin systems. In the scope of this talk, obviously I can't go into all of that. But here's some of the various sanding tools that we use. Here's someone sanding here, and then one of my finishing guys just doing some finishing touches on a board and wet sanding it out so that it can be delivered to the customer or the store. And then the board is finished. And here's a few boards that we've done with various artwork. And then there's someone I know that's just doing a little surfing here. From this point on, the board's ready to go, and someone can come and pick it up and go have fun on it, which is the ultimate part of the whole procedure. So that, I even went through it faster than I thought I would.